The moment you detach is the moment they notice, not because you vanished, but because you finally remembered your worth. They didn't expect it, did they? You were always there, always available, always the one who checked in first, waited last, and held on to the hope that maybe, just maybe, they'd appreciate you if you gave just a little more. But here's the truth, my friends. The more you gave, the more invisible you became. And that's the painful twist no one tells you. You don't get love by over-delivering. You don't get respect by staying emotionally exposed. You don't earn value by being the one who tries harder. You earn it by becoming rare, by becoming grounded, by becoming untouchable. Before we go deeper, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay with me because what we're about to unpack might just be the turning point in your life. Comment, "I am the silence," if you've ever felt the weight of chasing people who never looked back. It's time to flip the script. Hey folks, imagine this. You're a lighthouse, powerful, rooted, and shining in stillness. But instead of letting ships find their way to you, you jumped into the ocean trying to rescue every boat that looked your way. You swam toward chaos, thinking if you just showed them your light, they'd stay. But all you did was drown in water that was never meant for you. And now, you're climbing back up. You're standing tall again. But this time you're not moving. You're not chasing. You're letting your light do the work. My friends, emotional detachment isn't cold. It's clarity. It's not being heartless. It's finally having the heart to stop bleeding for someone who never tried to stop the cut. You've been sold a lie, that the more you show up, the more they'll love you. But all that's done is put you in a loop of neediness, waiting for crumbs of attention while your soul starves for real connection. It's time to break that cycle. It's time to stop auditioning for roles in other people's lives and start starring in your own. Let me tell you something that stings a little. They didn't pull away because you weren't good enough. They pulled away because they knew you'd stay. Certainty is the death of desire. And when they know your emotions orbit them like planets around a sun, they get lazy, they get comfortable, they lose curiosity. But when you emotionally detach, not to play games, but to protect your peace, everything changes. You stop being the one begging to be seen, and you become the one they can't stop watching. They don't chase comfort. They chase contrast. The version of you that doesn't ask, doesn't beg, doesn't explain. That's the version they feel when they lay in bed, wondering why the silence feels louder than your words ever did. Fun fact. The moment you stop sending those just checking in messages, the moment you stop watching their stories like it's a job, the moment you stop imagining a future where they finally get it, that's the moment you start getting your power back. Detachment doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care about yourself more. And that scares people, because they were banking on the version of you that always needed their presence to feel like enough. But you've outgrown that version. You've outgrown the weight. You've outgrown the weight. Now, you're not chasing, you're choosing, and that, folks, is where the game changes. That's when they chase you like never before, not because you twisted their arm, but because you stood still long enough for them to realize you were the prize all along. So if you're ready to step into that version of yourself, the grounded, magnetic, untouchable version, write this in the comments. I am the silence. Say it, show it. Stand in it. And don't forget to press that like button and subscribe because we're just getting started. Stay with me. Number 1, they crave what they can't control. You were never too much. They were just too used to being chased. Let that quote sink deep into your bones, my friends, because for so long you were convinced that being emotionally available, expressive, attentive was the key to winning them over. You thought if you just showed up more, explained more, forgave faster, loved louder, they'd finally choose you. But that wasn't love. That was self-abandonment disguised as devotion. And what did it bring you? An aching chest, a quiet phone, a mind full of overanalyzing silence. You were left wondering what went wrong while they casually lived their life, unbothered. But let me drop the truth they'll never tell you. The moment you detach emotionally, really detach, not pretend, the chase begins. Not because they suddenly respect you more, but because they no longer control you. And that loss of emotional gravity, it shakes them. Picture this. You're a flame, burning warm, steady, always there when they reached out. And so they danced around it carelessly. They thought they had forever access. But the moment you step back, that fire doesn't go out. It moves. And now they're left in the cold, shivering in confusion, asking questions they never imagined. Where did that warmth go? Why does their silence feel heavier than their presence ever did? Why do I miss someone I thought I had figured out? Because the truth is, they never feared losing you until you stopped acting like you'd never leave. You see, they crave what they can't control. They're not addicted to you. They're addicted to the power they had over the emotional version of you, the one who broke his own boundaries just to stay close. That version of you was easy to predict, easy to dismiss, easy to delay. But now, you've become a puzzle. And puzzles pull people in, not because of what they are, but because of what they reveal about the one trying to solve them. Still, I know what you're thinking. What if I let go and they forget about me? What if detachment pushes them further away? These fears are loud, I get it. But ask yourself, how has chasing worked so far? Has over-explaining earned their respect? Has double texting brought them closer? Or has it drained you dry while they felt emotionally full? This is the lie most people live under. That proximity equals importance. That being available will eventually earn you love. But availability without boundaries leads to emotional poverty. You end up broke in all the ways that matter: self-worth, confidence, peace. They were drawn to you at the start not because you were needy, but because you were whole. You had an energy they couldn't define, a vibe they wanted to understand. But somewhere along the line, you handed them the blueprint. You let them inside too fast. You made yourself emotionally predictable, and the moment someone knows you'll always be there, they stop showing up. Why? Because mystery creates momentum. And you gave it all away, not because you were wrong to love, but because you thought love meant sacrifice. It doesn't. It means standards. Now here's the twist. When you emotionally detach, when your happiness stops depending on their replies, when you no longer flinch at their silence, they feel it. Not right away, but in waves. One day, it's your absence in their notifications. Another day, it's the way your name doesn't pop up when they post that story they hoped you'd see. Then, it's the empty feeling in their chest when someone else gives them attention, but it doesn't hit the same. They won't talk about it. They'll pretend they're unbothered. But inside, they're scanning the emotional atmosphere for traces of you, because for the first time, you're no longer orbiting them. And no, this isn't about games. This isn't about pretending you don't care. It's about no longer needing to be needed. That's the real difference. That's what they can't replicate. Because emotional detachment isn't cold. It's calm. It's the silence that follows after a storm. It's the stillness that says, I've seen who I was, and I'm not going back there again. You don't become detached by accident. You become detached after bleeding for someone who didn't bring a bandage, after explaining your soul to someone who only skimmed the surface, after staying when you should have walked. And now you walk, not to hurt them, but to heal you. They'll feel that shift. In the way you reply slower, in the way you don't initiate anymore, in the way your eyes don't sparkle with the same need. They'll pick up on it, but they won't admit it. Because to admit it would mean confessing that they've lost the version of you they once took for granted. And folks, nobody likes confessing that kind of mistake. So stand tall in your silence. Let it echo through every space they thought you'd always fill. Let your detachment confuse them, not because you want to break them, but because you finally stopped breaking yourself. And when they come back, and they will, they won't recognize the man you've become, because the old version of you, he's resting now. And in his place stands a man who no longer lives for attention, but commands it by existing fully in his purpose. If you're feeling this shift in your bones, if you're ready to stop chasing people who only noticed your absence when your presence no longer served them, I want you to comment this right now. I am the flame. Write it for yourself. Show it to the world. Let them see that you're not fading. You're rising. You're just no longer burning for people who were never cold enough to appreciate your warmth. And stay with me, because we're about to go even deeper into the psychology of why your silence scares them more than your words ever did. Number 2, the paradox of detachment. Less attention, more desire. When you pull away from the wrong people, they don't just miss you, they panic. Not because they love you, but because their control is slipping. This is the part that breaks their rhythm. This is the part they never expect. You pulling back. You falling silent. You not reacting the way you used to when they delayed a reply or tested your patience. And at first they act like they don't notice. They scroll, they laugh, they post. But deep down, something is starting to itch. Something inside them feels off. Why? Because the one thing they relied on, your emotional consistency, has gone quiet. That's when the paradox begins. The less attention you give, the more they start to crave it. Not because your love suddenly became more valuable, but because your energy is no longer theirs on demand. And nothing triggers desire like the loss of assumed access. Imagine a stage light that used to follow them everywhere, warm, constant, familiar. They basked in it, confident it would always be there. They danced in it, posed in it, lived in it. But now, that light's off. The room is darker, colder, and suddenly they're just another person on the stage. That's the impact of your detachment. Not your silence, but the meaning behind your silence. It's not punishment. It's not spite. It's clarity. It's your spirit quietly saying, this no longer serves me. And that energy? It's intoxicating. Because most people, whether they admit it or not, are addicted to emotional validation. They get drunk on knowing someone is out there thinking about them, waiting for them, aching for them. So when you detach, not just physically, but emotionally, it creates a vacuum, an empty space where their power used to live. And here's what they'll do next. They'll start sending out signals, small, calculated ones, a story posted at a certain time, a vague status update, a like on an old post. They won't message you directly yet. Why? Because they want to know if the strings still pull you, if the puppet still dances, but you don't move. You've cut the strings. You're not performing anymore. And that stillness, that's what makes them spiral. See, when you were pouring your energy into them, they didn't have to earn it. It was free. It was constant. It was expected. But now your attention has become expensive. It has value. It has weight. And anything of value must be earned, or it becomes haunting. That's what happens when you pull away. You don't just leave a person. You leave an echo, a silence that reminds them of what they once had unlimited access to, and now don't. My friends, you've got to understand the gravity of emotional pull. It's not in how much you care. It's in how little of that care is available unless it's reciprocated. You don't stop caring entirely. You stop overgiving. You stop over-explaining. You stop showing up when no one knocks. That's where your power lives, in selective access, in reserved energy, in becoming so focused on your path that anyone who wants your time has to match your direction, not just your feelings. The paradox is this. When you detach from them, they attach to the idea of you, not the real, bleeding, overextended version of you, but the version that now seems unattainable, the version that's no longer a text away, the version who doesn't react to breadcrumbs. That version becomes rare, and what's rare becomes desirable. Even if they never respected the real you, they begin to fantasize about the memory of you, not because you changed overnight, but because your silence gave them space to finally feel your absence. And here's the kicker. They don't want you back out of love. Not always. Sometimes they just want access again. Sometimes they just want to know they could still have you. And if you give it too quickly, the paradox resets, the desire fades, and you're back to being predictable. This is why detachment must be rooted in peace, not performance. If you're pulling back to get a reaction, they'll feel it and manipulate it. But if you're pulling back because you genuinely no longer find peace in the cycle, you become immovable. You're no longer acting stoic, you are stoic. You're not emotionally unavailable. You're emotionally disciplined. You don't run toward the noise anymore. You walk steadily in your own lane, and in doing so, you force everyone who once ignored your presence to now feel your absence in ways they can't describe. Let them wonder. Let them question. Let them try to trace back the moment they lost emotional access to you. That's not your burden to carry anymore. That's theirs. You've moved on, not out of revenge, but out of reverence for your own spirit. You've detached, not to manipulate, but to finally make space for what aligns, what meets you halfway, what reflects the energy you give without begging, without bending. So if you're feeling this shift, if you're tired of being the one who always shows up first, texts first, explains yourself while they sit comfortably in silence, comment this right now. My peace is power. Write it below. Show yourself. Show the world. Because the man who can detach without fear is the man they never saw coming, and he's just getting started. Stay with me, because next we're going to unpack the secret reason your silence triggers them more than any love letter ever could. Number 3. Why emotional silence creates psychological noise. Your silence doesn't just speak, it echoes in places they thought you'd always be. They won't say it out loud. In fact, they'll pretend they're unbothered, that your absence means nothing, that your name doesn't make their chest tighten when it shows up in old notifications or buried memories. But here's the truth, my friends. Emotional silence is louder than any paragraph you could have written. It's the absence that haunts. Not because it's empty, but because it's full of everything they never appreciated when it was available. At first, they'll scroll right past you, or so it seems. No reaction, no follow-up, no text. But behind the scenes, something is unraveling. Not because of what you said, but because you stopped saying anything. That's the moment the script flips. Your voice, once predictable, once dependable, once always there, has gone missing. And that missing piece is not just confusing, it's disruptive. Like a familiar song that suddenly cuts out mid-note and leaves the silence buzzing in the ears. Folks, emotional silence isn't a lack of caring. It's the decision to stop broadcasting your pain to someone who kept changing the station. You were speaking your truth, trying to connect, trying to be real, and they treated it like background noise. So you did the unthinkable. You turned it off, not as a strategy, not as a punishment, but because your soul needed the quiet. And that's what messes them up the most. Because they expected you to shout louder, beg harder, reach further. Instead, you vanished. Now they're left with unanswered questions, not yours, theirs. Why aren't they reacting? Why didn't they fight harder? Did they really care? That's where the psychological noise begins. See, when you were constantly explaining yourself, they had the upper hand. They controlled the volume of the relationship. But when you went quiet, not cold, not cruel, just quiet. You took that power back. You became the mystery, and people obsess over mysteries they can't solve. Imagine this. They're in a room where your voice used to live. Laughter, affirmation, consistency, all of it echoing off the walls. But now, there's a stillness they can't break. Every word they think about sending sounds small. Every attempt to reconnect feels late. And here's the secret. They won't admit they miss you. They'll blame the silence. They'll call you distant. They'll project their confusion onto your peace. Because admitting they miss you means admitting they needed your energy. And that's something pride doesn't allow easily. But that's the irony, right? The very thing they once rolled their eyes at, your presence, your check-ins, your softness, now becomes the ghost that won't leave them alone. And not because you're haunting them, but because your absence finally made them realize what your presence meant, not to the world, to them. And now they're stuck in a loop, replaying the last thing you said, wondering if you meant it, rereading old messages for a hint of lingering emotion. But it's too late. You're no longer playing the game. Silence, when it comes from self-respect, becomes the most unforgettable language. It's not passive. It's not accidental. It's chosen. It says, I know what I bring. And I no longer hand it out like a free sample at a store full of window shoppers. You used to hand them access like a key under the doormat. Now the doors are closed, not locked, just selective. And that shift, it's deafening. They'll start overthinking for the first time in the entire dynamic. Did I mess up? Did I lose them? Are they talking to someone else? How can they not miss me? But what they're really asking is, why doesn't my power work anymore? Because they were never addicted to your love. They were addicted to the influence they had over your emotions. And now that you're quiet, they can't feel it. And when they can't feel it, they lose control. And when they lose control, they spiral. Let them spiral. Because that spiral, that's the same storm you were in when they made you feel like you were too much for just wanting clarity. The same confusion you carried when they gave you half-truths and expected you to be okay with it. Now you've put the weight down. Now you've stopped handing out explanations like they were owed. Now you've chosen peace over performance, and your silence has become your new boundary. My friends, don't confuse silence with weakness. It takes more strength to stay silent in your peace than to argue for your worth. It takes more discipline to walk away calmly than to scream for closure. And that strength? It doesn't just speak volumes, it becomes unforgettable. Because anyone can talk, few can stay still. And that stillness, that's your power now. So if you've ever felt this shift, if you've stopped texting, stopped overthinking, stopped explaining your soul to someone who only listened to reply, not to understand, comment this right now. My silence speaks. Say it to yourself. Say it to the world. Because the man who learns to master silence is the man who becomes impossible to forget. Stay with me. Because in the next section, we're going to expose what really happens when they realize the version of you they once took for granted has become the version they can no longer reach. Number 4, how they respond when they sense you're gone. They never thought you'd leave, until you did, quietly, calmly, and completely. And now the silence burns louder than your presence ever did. At first, they feel a shift, but they can't name it. It's subtle, a gap in the timeline, a moment where they expect you to react, to reply, to fold like you always did, and you don't. You're no longer rushing to respond, no longer double texting, no longer trying to fix what only you were trying to keep alive. You didn't make an announcement. You didn't slam the door. You simply stopped handing them the version of you who stayed too long in places he wasn't seen. And that's when the questions start creeping in, not from you, but from them. Not because they suddenly miss you, but because they don't know why they don't feel your energy anymore. You were like oxygen, always present, always available. You were their emotional safety net, their backup battery, their fallback plan. And now, nothing, and nothing. That scares them. They try to test the waters. A subtle hey, a random meme, a vague story posted at the perfect time, hoping you'll see it and react like you used to. But you don't. You've stopped playing the role. You've stopped jumping at breadcrumbs. You've stopped running towards someone who only stood still while you chased. And that silence, it stings. My friends, the moment they realize you're really gone, not just physically but emotionally detached, is the moment their mask starts to slip. You'll see confusion hidden in politeness. You'll see forced calm in their words, but you'll feel the anxiety underneath. Because for the first time, they're experiencing what you felt, the uncertainty, the silence, the space, and they don't like it. Not because they suddenly see your value, but because they no longer control how you feel. They won't come back with honesty, rarely with an apology. They'll come back with patterns, familiar phrases, emotional callbacks. I was just thinking about you. Remember when we... And it won't be because they want to start over. It'll be because they're trying to return to the version of you who hadn't yet realized his worth. But that version no longer exists. That man is buried, and in his place is someone they never planned for, a man who no longer reacts to their rhythm. And here's where most men slip. They confuse this reconnection as love, but it's not love. It's recognition. They're recognizing that your energy is no longer theirs, and they want it back, not to nurture it, but to consume it again. Not because they've changed, but because your silence is a mirror, and it's showing them parts of themselves they never wanted to see. You'll notice it in the way they reach out without substance. They won't say much. They'll try to sound casual, but pay attention to the tone beneath the tone. It's not curiosity. It's calculation. They're scanning for weaknesses, for cracks in your stillness, for any sign that you might still be the version of you who placed them at the center of your emotional universe. But you've changed. You no longer orbit their validation. You've become your own center. You're no longer powered by hope. They are. And hope, my friends, is what creates tension. Because now they're hoping you'll reply. They're hoping you'll miss them. They're hoping your silence is just a test. But it's not. It's a new way of being, and that shift is terrifying for someone who once lived off your need for closeness. Let them wonder. Let them overthink. Let them wrestle with the stillness, because it's not your job to explain your healing to the ones who watched you bleed and handed you a tissue with one hand while stabbing you with the other. You don't owe them access just because they finally realized what they lost, especially when they only noticed the value after it was no longer free. See, when they sense you're gone, they start comparing everyone else to you, not to the needy version, not to the man who begged, but to the one who grew, the one who became focused, centered, unreachable, and no one else quite feels like that. Because they're not chasing a person anymore, they're chasing a feeling they can't replicate because they didn't create it. You did. That's the real consequence of emotional detachment. You don't leave them angry, you leave them empty. Because your silence isn't void. It's full of everything they used to take for granted. It holds your patience, your loyalty, your softness, your effort. It's all there, just no longer available. And the weight of that's what makes them spiral in the quiet. So if you're in this place right now, if you've stopped reaching out, stopped chasing, stopped offering yourself to someone who only held you halfway, comment this right now. I've let go. Write it for yourself. Show it to the world. Because letting go isn't giving up. It's growing up. It's realizing you were never too much. They were just never enough to match your depth. Stay with me, because next, we're going deeper into why Stoic detachment isn't cold. It's the ultimate form of self-respect that changes how everyone sees you, especially them. Number 5. The difference between emotional unavailability and Stoic detachment. They called you cold, only because your warmth no longer bowed to their inconsistency. There's a lie floating around, my friends, and it's one too many good men have swallowed. The moment you stop pouring endlessly into someone who gives back in teaspoons, they call you emotionally unavailable. The second you choose peace over chasing clarity, they say you've shut down. But let's be clear right now. There's a world of difference between being emotionally unavailable and being stoically detached. One is fear-based, the other is power-born. Emotional unavailability is rooted in wounds. It's avoiding connection. It's building walls out of pain and calling it strength. But Stoic detachment, that's the man who has felt everything, deeply, and chose not to lose himself in emotions that aren't reciprocated. It's not that he doesn't feel, it's that he's no longer a slave to those feelings. He still has a heart. He's just not handing out the keys to people who keep slamming the door. You've been there, haven't you? Giving your best, being open, transparent, honest about what you want. And instead of being met with the same depth, you were labeled as too intense, too much, or the worst of all, too emotional. So what did you do? You backed off. But not because you stopped caring. You backed off because you finally saw that you were the only one trying to build something real while they were busy decorating exits. That shift, when you go quiet, when you stop giving them the version of you that overextends, that's when they start throwing words like cold or distant or guarded. But they're not describing who you are, they're describing the loss of control they once had. Because Stoic detachment, my friends, isn't the absence of emotion, it's the presence of emotional mastery. It's standing at the gates of your own peace and saying, you don't get to come in just because you knock. You're not avoiding connection, you're protecting your connection with yourself. And people who were only attracted to the emotional version of you they could manipulate, they won't like this new you. They won't recognize you. They'll say you've changed, and they're right. You did. You grew. And let me tell you, it's not easy. Detachment isn't a switch you flip overnight. It's a discipline you build after being bent, stretched, and torn by the weight of emotional imbalance. It's late nights questioning your worth. It's long mornings choosing to focus on your purpose instead of their silence. It's waking up and realizing that your attention is a currency, and not everyone deserves a transaction. When you're emotionally unavailable, you ghost to avoid feeling. When you're stoically detached, you choose to feel fully, then move forward without needing their validation to carry that feeling. You've learned how to hold space for your emotions without making them your identity. And that, my friends, is rare. It's rare because most people are still stuck in emotional extremes. They're either over-attached or completely avoidant. But you've found the middle path, the quiet lane, the place where you can love without losing yourself, where you can care without clinging, where you can feel without folding. That's Stoicism, not numbness, nobility. The nobility of not reacting to every provocation, the nobility of not needing to explain your boundaries, the nobility of knowing your soul doesn't belong to anyone who treats it like an option. And here's what happens. People who once relied on your emotional availability to feel important now feel lost in your calm. Your detachment disorients them. They throw out bait, old jokes, check-ins, guilt trips. But you don't bite, not because you're angry, but because you're no longer hungry for connection that costs your peace. They think you're playing hard to get. You're not playing anything. You're just done performing. And here's where your real power kicks in. When they try to come back, to pull you in, to reignite what they once had unlimited access to, they can't, because Stoic detachment doesn't scream. It doesn't argue. It doesn't need to convince. It just exists. Unbothered, unavailable to chaos. committed to self-respect. So if they accuse you of being cold, let them. If they say you've changed, nod your head. Because you didn't come this far to be dragged back into emotional games by someone who only valued you when you were easy to reach. You came this far to build something unshakable, something sovereign, something sacred. If this speaks to your soul, if you've felt the power of becoming emotionally grounded, if you've walked away not because you didn't love, but because you loved yourself more, then comment this right now. I choose peace. Say it in the comments. Show them, show yourself, show the world that your silence is not emptiness, it's presence, that your detachment is not distance, it's discipline, and that this new version of you, this grounded, focused, emotionally secure version, he's not a defense mechanism, he's your arrival. Stay with me, because next we're going to uncover how you stop being an option and become the standard, the one they never expected to rise this high. Number 6, you stop being an option. You become a standard. They lost you when they assumed you'd always be available, but what they didn't see coming is the version of you that doesn't return. At first, you were just another choice on their list, another contact in their phone, another good soul with a soft heart, ready to give, ready to fix, ready to prove your worth. You were the safe space, the one who forgave easily, who waited patiently, who stayed even when staying cost you your peace. You thought love meant availability. You thought loyalty would make them choose you, but all it did was put you in the back seat of your own life while they drove recklessly with your emotions. Until you got tired, until you stopped waiting, until you finally realized that you were never supposed to be an option. You were meant to be the standard. And that shift, my friends, it's not loud, it's not angry, it's not messy, it's quiet, calm, stoic, but it shakes everything. Because now you don't move like you used to. You don't chase, you don't check. You don't need their attention to feel like a man. You've stepped into your own value, and when that happens, you stop needing to be seen by the world because you're finally being seen by yourself. And that is terrifying to the people who once thrived off your doubt. They feel it immediately, even if they won't say it. That energy shift, that gap, that silence, and suddenly you're not who you used to be. You're not the man who replies in seconds. You're not the one who stays on read hoping they'll notice. You're not bending, explaining, begging for crumbs anymore. You've risen, and in doing so, you've forced them to confront something they never planned for, a version of you that doesn't need them anymore. You stop being the emotional doormat. You stop being the one who adjusts to their mood swings, their inconsistency, their confusion. You become solid, certain, directed. You move with intention. You walk like someone who has somewhere to be. And that confidence, that quiet certainty, that's what sets the new standard. Let's be real. Most people aren't used to men who know their worth. They're used to men who overgive, who over-explain, who overstay. So when you show up calm, focused, detached from needing them to choose you, you stand out. Not because you're louder, but because you've become immovable. You're not just another guy hoping for validation. You're the one they remember, because your absence left a deeper mark than your presence ever could. They start comparing, not because you were perfect, but because now every connection feels shallow next to the depth you carried. Every message feels forced. Every compliment feels cheap. Because they're not looking for a man who shows up desperately. They're subconsciously chasing the feeling you gave off when you stopped chasing them. That feeling of emotional strength, of presence without pressure, of a man who could have stayed, but didn't. And here's the truth they don't talk about. Once you become the standard, you can't be replaced. Not by someone who replies faster, not by someone who flatters more, because none of that matches your energy. And energy doesn't lie. You didn't become rare because you played games. You became rare because you healed, you elevated, you moved out of the emotional basement and into the penthouse of your life. And now they can't reach you, not because you blocked them, but because they're not willing to climb. It's in the way you walk now, the way you talk, the way your focus has shifted from chasing them to building you. You're no longer seeking permission to exist in their world. You're building your own, and that makes you unforgettable. Because they're not haunted by the man who begged. They're haunted by the man who evolved, the one who left, not with bitterness, but with grace, and never looked back. They may reach out, they may test the waters, but you'll see it differently now. You won't see potential, you'll see patterns. You won't hear affection, you'll hear access, and instead of melting at their words, you'll measure their actions. Because the man who becomes a standard doesn't settle for emotional confusion. He doesn't tolerate half-love. He doesn't allow chaos in the temple he built from rock bottom. So if you've reached that place, if you've gone from waiting for a text to waking up with purpose, comment this right now. I am the standard. Say it in the comments, say it in your soul, because you didn't go through all that pain just to end up being someone's backup plan. You're not the fallback, you're not the maybe. You are the measure now, and not everyone qualifies. Stay with me. Because next, we're diving into the mirror effect, how your emotional detachment becomes the obsession they never expected, and why trying to match your energy only reveals how far behind they really are. Number 7. The mirror effect. Your detachment becomes their obsession. You don't chase them anymore, and now they can't stop watching you walk. At first, they don't even flinch. They assume you're just having a moment, that you'll be back. You always come back, right? They've seen this before. Your silence, your pause, your emotional withdrawal. They think it's a phase. A temporary glitch in the program they thought they'd programmed. But what they don't know is that this time, you're not coming back. You've detached. Not for attention, not for drama, but for you. And when your energy leaves, something wild happens. They don't just notice the silence, they mirror it. Not because they understand it, but because they're trying to regain the balance they lost. They start matching your energy, but not out of evolution, out of fear, out of confusion. They reduce their texts, delay their replies, post cryptic things, not because they're at peace, but because they're hoping to bait yours. They're playing detached, while you are detached. And that difference, my friends, is what drives them crazy. They don't know how to sit still in silence, but you do. You've learned to breathe there. You've made peace your home. You've built a life that doesn't depend on their message, their mood, or their presence. And that unsettles them more than anything, because before your world orbited around them. Now, you've become your own sun, your own gravity, and they feel the shift, not just emotionally, but psychologically. They start watching your moves, reading your captions, checking your stories, listening for echoes of themselves in your growth. And even when they try to move on, they can't help but measure every new connection against you. Not the old you, not the one who begged, but the one who got up and never looked back. Your detachment becomes their mirror, a reflection of everything they failed to value when it was freely given. And now they're left mimicking your calm, pretending they're good, faking peace while wondering why your energy feels unreachable. But here's the twist. They're not trying to win you back. They're trying to find themselves again through the version of you they can no longer touch. They imitate the stillness, but stillness without substance is just a pose. And while they strike the same posture, they don't carry the same power. Because your silence was earned, forged in late nights, in swallowed pride, in letting go of the version of yourself that kept settling for less. You didn't just become stoic, you became sovereign. And that's what they feel now. Not rejection, but loss. real loss. The kind that creeps into quiet moments. The kind that hums beneath smiles. The kind that whispers, "You had something rare," and you let it slip. They'll try to copy the detachment, but they can't replicate the growth. So if you're there now, if you've felt the power of silence, the pull of peace, the strength in not reacting, write this in the comments. My silence is earned. Let it echo through your soul. Let it echo in the world around you. Because you didn't choose detachment to win someone back. You chose it to never lose yourself again. And if this spoke to you, if this helped you rise even 1 inch higher in your self-worth, then hit that like button. Subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to hear that they are not broken. They are becoming. This is your turning point. This is your legacy, no longer the one who waits, but the one they never forget.